The hall was a cathedral of precision and order. Glass floors reflecting polished armor, metallic walls humming with power conduits, and banners of 100 worlds hanging under the sterile light of the Arkael Military Academy. The gravity field was tuned perfectly to match the Drithian standard, lighter than Earth's, but heavy enough to remind weaker species that this was a place of control, not comfort. Cadet Evelyn Drake stood at attention in the center of the combat arena, boots aligned, gaze fixed on the far wall. Her uniform was immaculate, pressed fabric, regulation black with silver lining, but it couldn't hide what she was, a human. Around her, rows of alien cadets filled the observation seats. Some whispered in low clicks and ultrasonic tones. Others laughed through vibrating vocal cords that rattled the air. Their eyes, multicolored, multifaceted, and cold, studied her as if she were an exhibit. "Human," one hissed, its words warped by a translator node. "Deathworld stock." "Fragile thing," another chuckled, mandibles twitching. Evelyn didn't react. She'd heard worse. Her hands rested behind her back, posture calm, breath steady. The oxygen tasted faintly of iron. The Academy's recycled air systems never fully scrubbed it clean. The faint burn in her lungs reminded her she was alive. At the far end of the hall, the massive doors slid open with a hiss of decompression. The sound alone made the crowd fall silent. Commander Threx Varnal entered, 7 feet of crystalline armor and arrogance, his angular frame reflecting the light in sharp, shifting colors. His eyes, like shards of frozen quartz, flicked over the cadets before locking onto her. "Cadet Drake," he said, voice amplified through the hall. "Step forward." She obeyed without hesitation, boots striking the glass floor with a hollow echo. "This academy prides itself on diversity," he began, pacing with slow, deliberate steps. "We accept students from worlds that birthed giants, empaths, and elementals. And yet," he stopped, facing her directly, "Earth's contribution is a creature evolved to kill its own ecosystem." A ripple of laughter spread through the room. Evelyn kept her eyes forward. "Permission to speak, Commander." "Denied," Threx cut her off. "You will speak when I ask you to." The laughter grew louder. He circled her like a scientist examining a flawed specimen. "Humans, oxygen-breathing primates born on a world of toxins and predators. You call yourselves adaptable, resilient, dangerous." His tone sharpened. "I call it evolutionary desperation." She remained silent. He stopped in front of her again, lowering his gaze until his translucent face caught the light like glass filled with frost. "Tell me, Cadet, how does it feel to stand among true civilizations?" Evelyn's voice was level. "Humbling, sir." The commander's crystalline lips twitched. "Humbling," he repeated softly as though tasting the word. "Interesting. You see, humility is not a trait I associate with your kind." He turned to the crowd. "We will conduct a demonstration, a simple reflex test. Let us see what the Deathworlder can do." The room stirred with anticipation. Evelyn's pulse quickened, but her breathing didn't change. She had trained for this since day one. Not for combat, for control. Every human cadet knew the rule. Show them calm first. Earn respect second. Threx gestured, and a hollow droid descended from the ceiling. It projected 4 glowing spheres that began circling her body at random speeds. The test was meant to measure reaction time and precision under pressure. For other species, it was routine. For a human, it was theater. "Ready, Cadet?" "Yes, Commander. Begin." The spheres darted. Evelyn's hand moved like a whisper. One caught, one deflected, one missed by a fraction. Her movements were minimal, efficient. No wasted effort. She adjusted, recalibrated, adapted mid-motion. Threx narrowed his eyes. Again. Increased speed. The spheres accelerated until they blurred. Evelyn's pupils contracted. She began to track them by sound rather than sight, each faint hum mapping itself in her mind. Her body moved before thought formed, reflex without hesitation. A murmur rose through the spectators. She wasn't the fastest they'd seen, but she was consistent, unnervingly so. After a full minute, Threx raised a hand. The spheres froze midair. Impressive for a mammal, but still predictable. He deactivated the hollow and turned his back to her. "Step forward." She obeyed. He pressed a command on his wristband, activating a force field that isolated them from the others. "You've studied galactic physiology, haven't you?" "Yes, Commander." "Then you understand your kind's limitations. Fragile skeleton, over-reliance on adrenaline, short lifespan. I am curious. Do you know why the galaxy fears your species despite your inferiority?" Evelyn paused. "Because we don't stop." The room went still. Threx turned, one crystalline brow raised. "Say that again." She met his gaze. "We don't stop, sir." "Even when we should," he chuckled as a sharp ringing sound. A poetic answer. But no. The galaxy fears your kind because you mistake defiance for strength. You fight even when logic dictates surrender. That isn't bravery, Cadet Drake, it's madness. He took a step closer, his face inches from hers. "You are a mistake that refuses extinction." Evelyn's jaw flexed, but she said nothing. The translator nodes captured her heartbeat, slow, steady, deliberate. Threx smirked. "Good, you're learning restraint. Perhaps your species can evolve after all." He deactivated the field and turned to the assembled cadets. "Observe, everyone. This is the height of human composure, the monster that refuses to bare its teeth." A ripple of laughter followed. Evelyn didn't move. Her silence unnerved more than defiance ever could. When the hall emptied, she remained standing, alone, beneath the sterile lights. Her reflection in the glass floor looked calm, but her fingers twitched once before she stilled them. From the corner of the hall, a faint voice broke the quiet. It was Jacri, a smaller alien cadet who had refused to laugh earlier. "Why didn't you hit him?" Evelyn turned slightly. "Because he wanted me to." The alien tilted its head. "You're not afraid?" "I was," she said simply. "That's how I knew it wasn't time yet." The cadet didn't understand, but nodded respectfully and left. When the hall fell silent again, Evelyn exhaled through her nose, barely audible. She glanced up at the Academy emblem, a silver star over a black void, and whispered to herself, "Tomorrow he'll push harder." She straightened her uniform, stepped out of the ring, and walked through the doors. Behind her, the last echoes of her boots faded, leaving only the hum of the training dome and the faint crack in the glass floor where her reflex strike had landed when the lights dimmed. The Academy would review that footage later. Commander Threx would see it. The movement too fast for sensors to register, the pressure fracturing reinforced glass, and for the first time, he would hesitate before calling her fragile. The training dome was transformed overnight. Hollow screens hovered in every corner, broadcasting a live feed to dozens of other academies across the outer systems. The banners of participating species glowed with their colors: violet for the Drithians, azure for the Keth, crimson for the Charaka. Every seat was filled. It wasn't a lesson anymore. It was spectacle. Cadet Evelyn Drake entered the dome flanked by 2 security drones. Her uniform was stripped of rank markings, replaced by a plain gray training suit. Even stripped of insignia, she stood straighter than most. The air buzzed with whispers, laughter, and the metallic scent of ozone from the force field barriers. Commander Threx stood in the center of the arena, hands clasped behind his back, crystalline armor gleaming under the artificial light. His reflection fractured into 1,000 shards on the floor. "Cadets!" his voice boomed. "Today we conclude our discussion on evolutionary efficiency. Observe carefully. You are about to witness the limit of human capability." His tone carried that false calm used by predators before a kill. Evelyn stepped onto the field, her eyes sweeping the perimeter, exits, drone positions, camera angles. She noted the heavy presence of security and the small, glinting implant receiver Threx wore on his wrist. "Cadet Drake," Threx began, "your planet's archives boast of extraordinary resilience. You survive radiation predators, your own wars. Admirable, if wasteful." She stayed silent. "Today you will prove your species' claims, unarmed, against trained opponents. The simulation will continue until I decide you've reached your threshold," the crowd murmured. Evelyn caught the faint phrase Deathworlder display among the alien voices. 4 enforcers entered the ring, 1 from each major race. They moved like veterans, calm and precise. Threx motioned for them to take positions around her. Evelyn exhaled through her nose, setting her stance. Knees slightly bent, shoulders relaxed, she didn't look at any one opponent directly, only watched their reflections in the glass. "Begin," Threx ordered. The first blow came from behind. She twisted, caught the alien's wrist, and redirected the strike into the second attacker's chest. The impact sent both sprawling but not out. She stepped sideways, ducking under a strike that split the air above her. The sound of kinetic armor cracking echoed through the dome. Her movements were quiet, measured, efficient. She avoided unnecessary force, letting momentum and timing do the work. Each motion was reflex, not emotion, but the crowd didn't cheer. They watched in growing unease. Every time she moved, it looked wrong to them, too fluid for flesh, too predictive for instinct. Threx's eyes narrowed. "She's been trained beyond regulation parameters," he muttered. He pressed a button on his wristband. Pain exploded through her spine. The implant in her neck flared, a neural limiter meant to test stress endurance. Her muscles seized. The world blurred. She dropped to one knee, breath catching in her throat. The crowd roared with laughter. Threx spoke calmly into the mic. "Observe the human nervous system under strain, incompatible with higher control functions. Primitive body cannot maintain performance." Evelyn's vision swam. Her heartbeat thundered in her ears, steady, deliberate, counting seconds. 1, 2, 3. She forced her hand to the floor, anchoring herself. "Breathe. Don't fight the current. Redirect it." Her father's voice echoed in her mind, the first lesson every Deathworlder child learned. She used the pain, rerouting the tension into focus. The tremors subsided. Her breath leveled. Threx frowned. "Increase voltage." The implant surged again, sharp enough to drop any other species unconscious. Evelyn's jaw locked. A strangled sound escaped her throat, then silence. She stayed kneeling, spine bowed, eyes on the floor. The commander leaned closer to the mic. "You see? Instinct wins. Even their bodies know submission." He deactivated the limiter, approached her slowly, and crouched just close enough that his reflection merged with hers. "Look at you," he whispered. "Broken already. You humans talk about strength, but all I see is fragility hiding behind noise." Evelyn didn't raise her head. "Permission to speak, Commander." Threx smiled, amused. "Granted. Amuse us." Her voice was low, calm. "You misunderstand what you're seeing." "Oh? I'm not broken. I'm calculating." The laughter died instantly. Her tone carried no anger, no tremor, Emma, just quiet precision. Threx's eyes flickered. "Calculating what, Cadet?" She lifted her gaze. Her pupils had narrowed to pinpoints, focused and steady. "The exact moment when you'll regret this." A murmur spread through the spectators. Threx's grin faltered, but he masked it with arrogance. Bold words from a trembling mammal. He gestured to the guards. "Continue the test." They attacked again, faster, coordinated. Evelyn rolled backward, using one's momentum to vault upright. A single pivot, and her elbow caught another's rib joint with surgical precision. No wasted energy, just geometry and physics. She wasn't fighting anymore. She was adjusting. Each strike flowed into the next. Never more force than necessary, never repeated. One fell, two stumbled. Three froze before advancing again. Threx's frustration became visible, a faint crack spreading across his crystalline temple. "Enough," he said. The word came too sharp. "Deactivate simulation." The guards retreated. Evelyn stood motionless, hands at her sides, breathing steady despite the lingering burn of the implant. Threx walked toward her, every step deliberate. "You lasted longer than expected," he admitted. But this was not victory. It was tolerance, a trait your kind mistakes for courage. She didn't respond. He stopped inches from her face, lowering his voice so only the front row could hear. "Tell me, Cadet Drake, do you know why I wanted this demonstration?" Evelyn's tone was quiet but unflinching. "To humiliate me. To prove humanity's control is an illusion." Threx tilted his head, crystalline facets catching the light like razors. "Control is an illusion. Every creature breaks. Even humans." He raised a hand and, in deliberate insult, brushed a claw along her cheek, a gesture of dominance. "Your species' mistake is believing restraint equals strength. It's weakness disguised as dignity. The world narrowed for Evelyn. The dome faded, the noise receded. There was only the cold touch of the commander's claw and the faint metallic scent of ozone. Her breath slowed. The pulse in her temples stilled. The tremor in her muscles vanished completely. She looked him directly in the eyes and whispered, "You wanted a monster." Threx frowned, confused by the calmness in her tone. "What did you—" The force field around them pulsed. The sound of cracking glass echoed faintly beneath their feet. She straightened, slow and deliberate. "You'll meet one." The crowd felt it before they understood it. The drop in temperature, the shift in air pressure, the instinctive alarm that rippled through alien nervous systems designed to sense danger. Threx took a step back. "Deactivate field," he ordered sharply. But the control panel flickered, unresponsive. For the first time, uncertainty crept into his perfect voice. Evelyn's eyes glinted under the lights, not with rage, but with the silence of something ancient and patient. The kind of silence that existed only between heartbeat and impact. Every sensor in the dome began recording at maximum frame rate, and somewhere deep in the Academy's observation deck, a technician whispered, 10 seconds! That's all it'll take." The dome held its breath. Every hum, every flicker of light froze in suspended stillness. Commander Threx stood motionless, hand half raised, the smirk dying before it reached his crystalline lips. Across from him, Evelyn Drake didn't move. She simply looked at him, calm, precise, calculating. A heartbeat passed. Then another. The first sound was the soft click of her heel as she shifted weight. The second was the sharp crack of air displaced by motion faster than the eye could track. The world seemed to stutter. The holo recorders glitched, frames skipping. When the images stabilized, 2 guards were already on the ground, one's weapon arm twisted at an unnatural angle, the other gasping for breath. Threx's composure fractured. "Stand down, human." Evelyn didn't respond. She moved again, no blur, no warning. One step, pivot, strike. The third enforcer dropped before completing his rotation. His armor sparked where her elbow had connected. Shards of alloy scattered across the floor. The fourth attacker hesitated, instincts screaming retreat. Too late. Evelyn's eyes fixed on him with the calm certainty of a surgeon marking a cut. A flick of movement, a redirected charge, and he crashed headfirst into the containment wall. The impact left a spiderweb of cracks glowing blue under the shield's field. It had taken 9 seconds. Evelyn stopped moving. The silence that followed was heavier than any sound. The audience of cadets sat frozen, unsure if they were still supposed to breathe. Threx's voice broke the quiet, strained but still loud enough to reach the far seats. "Deactivate field now." Nothing happened. The dome's system had automatically locked during combat protocols. He looked down at his wrist console, light flickering weakly under the network interference generated by her kinetic outburst. Evelyn turned toward him. The movement was measured, deliberate, like gravity itself had decided to obey her pace. Her expression hadn't changed. Calm, focused, unreadable. Threx stepped back once, then steadied himself, forcing his voice into authority. "This behavior will result in termination of your species' treaty status. Do you hear me?" She stopped an arm's length away. "Yes, Commander." Her tone was neutral, but something in it hollowed the room. She reached forward, slow enough for every eye to follow, and gripped the front of his armor just below the collar ridge. The crystalline surface whined under pressure. Threx tried to pull away. He couldn't. She wasn't straining. Her arm didn't tremble. The strength came from precision, not brute force. "You wanted proof," she said quietly. "Release me," he demanded, voice cracking through the amplifiers. Evelyn leaned closer, eyes level with his. "You called us monsters. I wanted to believe you were wrong." She tightened her grip. "Now I see you just didn't understand what that word means." A hairline fracture split down the center of his chest plate. The sound echoed like breaking ice. Security alarms screamed. Dozens of drones zipped toward the dome, projectors flaring. The cadets scattered from the front rows, some shouting in fear, others recording despite orders not to. Evelyn didn't move. She studied Threx's terrified expression, the first real emotion he'd shown since she arrived at the academy. He managed to choke out a question. "What are you?" Her answer was almost kind. "A consequence." Then she released him. He collapsed to the floor, gasping, crystalline fragments glittering around him. Evelyn stepped back, posture straight, voice clear. "Demonstration concluded, Commander." The field deactivated with a hiss. Security drones swarmed in, projecting barriers between her and the others. None approached within reach. Every sensor in the room tracked her vitals. Heart rate steady, oxygen normal, no sign of adrenaline spikes. She wasn't raging. She was simply done. The senior adjudicator, a towering insectoid named Vice Marshal Kethra, descended from the observation deck. Her chitin shimmered under the lights, mandibles clicking in confusion. "Cadet Drake, you attacked a commanding officer. Explain yourself." Evelyn faced her calmly. "I followed demonstration protocol." He initiated the combat. I responded until he yielded. "That was not yielding," Kethra snapped. Evelyn tilted her head slightly. He stopped moving. "That's usually the definition." The alien's mandibles froze mid-click. For a moment, the hall filled with static from hundreds of recorders trying to process overlapping data streams. Then the Vice Marshal waved her drones aside. "Escort the commander to medbay. Detain the human for evaluation." Threx tried to stand, voice rasping. "No!" "Let her—" He stopped, catching his reflection in the fractured glass beneath him. Something in his eyes broke. "Let her go." Every being in the dome turned toward him, stunned. He pushed himself upright, armor creaking. "She did what I asked." "The demonstration is complete." Kethra hesitated. "Commander, you can't be serious. I said it's complete," he repeated, tone sharp enough to cut. His gaze shifted to Evelyn. For the first time, it wasn't contempt, it was recognition. The galaxy needed to be reminded. Evelyn met his stare but didn't speak. She knew what he meant. Reminded that Earth's people were not fragile visitors. They were apex survivors wrapped in restraint. When the med drones lifted him away, he didn't look back. Evelyn remained alone in the center of the shattered dome. The silence that followed was the kind that only follows fear. Every cadet knew they had just seen something impossible. Violence without emotion, dominance without rage. A young alien officer approached, trembling. "Cadet Drake, Are humans all like you?" She turned toward him slowly, expression softening. "No," she said. "Most are better." He blinked, not understanding, but nodded anyway. Outside the Academy dome, the news feeds began broadcasting fragments of the footage. Within hours, every major world would see the human cadet dismantle elite soldiers and stand unshaken. Commentators would argue about ethics, control, and the danger of Deathworld psychology. But those who looked closely at the raw footage would notice something else, the moment she spared Threx when she could have ended him. The pause between her precision and his fear, Evelyn walked out of the arena alone. The corridors were empty, light strips flickering as security systems rebooted. Each footstep echoed like a metronome against the glass floor. She reached the viewport overlooking Terran 5's surface, where the Academy lights shimmered across the moon's barren ice. Her reflection stared back, hair disheveled, face calm. For a long moment, she just stood there. Then she whispered, "They'll never call us fragile again." A faint tremor rippled through the dome as power stabilized. The hum of the Academy returned, order restored but not the same. Something in the air had changed, something no system could regulate. Respect edged with fear. Behind her, the Academy's crest flickered back to life, a silver star over black void. It glowed brighter than before, casting a faint halo around her silhouette. When the recording of the event was filed later that day, the system time-stamped it as 10 seconds of anomaly. The official report labeled the incident as controlled human reflex escalation. But among the cadets, it earned another name whispered with awe and caution. The moment the monster woke. Evelyn turned from the viewport, eyes steady, and walked toward the exit. Her hands were relaxed, her pace even. There was no victory in her expression, only clarity. The experiment had proven its point. The galaxy had seen a human lose control. And what terrified them most was how calm she'd been while doing it. The report began with silence. Not data, not timestamps, just blank seconds of missing sound. Someone had tried to edit the feed, but fragments remained. The hum of the dome, the faint click of boots, and Commander Threx's voice. Strained, hollow. The demonstration is complete. Do not interfere. That single line made the entire Galactic Defense Council pause. No Drithian commander had ever said those words about a subordinate who attacked them. 3 days later, the footage reached Earth. Evelyn Drake sat inside a cold observation cell deep beneath the Arkael Academy's administrative wing. The walls were seamless alloy absorbing sound. A single strip of blue light illuminated the table before her. Across from her sat 2 figures, Vice Marshal Kethra and a human in diplomatic uniform, insignia of the Terran embassy glinting on his lapel. Cadet Drake, Kethra began, voice clipped. Your actions constitute a breach of Article 9 of the Multi-Species Conduct Charter. You assaulted a commanding officer. Evelyn kept her eyes level. He ordered the assault. That's irrelevant, the alien snapped, mandibles clicking sharply. The Council is calling for your extradition to Drithian custody, pending evaluation of your species' suitability for continued membership in the Alliance. The human diplomat leaned forward, tone quiet but cutting. You're calling it an evaluation. They're calling it a purge. Kethra's antennae twitched. Mind your words, Ambassador Hale. He smiled thinly. I always do. He turned to Evelyn. You have no idea how many systems are replaying that footage. Half the galaxy's terrified, the other half wants to recruit you. Evelyn's voice was steady. Neither is ideal. Kethra's compound eyes focused on her. Tell me the truth, human. What were you thinking during that final moment? Evelyn hesitated before answering. I was thinking he needed to understand restraint isn't weakness. By nearly killing him? No, she said softly. By choosing not to. The silence that followed stretched like a drawn wire. Hale glanced at the alien officer, then back to Evelyn. Your self-control may have saved more than your life. The Council's already split. Half of them believe you proved humanity is dangerous. The other half thinks you proved we're civilized. She leaned back slightly, tired but calm. Both are correct. That night, the Academy was under curfew. Cadets whispered in dim corridors. Holofeeds replaying her image on loop, slow motion, frame by frame. Dissected by analysts who'd never been in a real fight. One voice repeated through the halls, the human could have killed him. She didn't. Fear had turned to fascination. Respect followed behind it. In the med bay, Commander Threx lay on a reinforced bed surrounded by monitors. Cracks still traced faint lines through his crystalline body, but they hadn't healed evenly. Drithian physiology could mend fractures, not pride. His assistant entered quietly. Council wants your written statement, Commander. Threx didn't answer. He stared at the holographic window where Evelyn's combat data replayed endlessly. Motion vectors, heart rate, neural response. No signs of loss of control. She was composed, he murmured. Sir? He didn't look away from the screen. They call her dangerous because she didn't kill me. That's what frightens them. The assistant shifted nervously. Will you recommend expulsion? Threx finally turned, his tone unreadable. No. I'll recommend promotion. 2 days later, Evelyn was escorted through the Academy's central atrium. Every cadet, regardless of species, stopped to watch her pass. No one spoke. The silence was its own salute. At the top of the grand stair, Threx stood waiting, no longer in armor but ceremonial robes. The gesture itself was disarming. She approached, posture formal. Commander. Cadet, he acknowledged. His voice carried none of the arrogance from before, just a heavy weariness. The Council demanded your dismissal. I refused, her brow tightened slightly. Why? Because I tested your species under provocation and still live to report it. He paused, then added, I've spent years studying strength. You taught me it doesn't always roar. Evelyn didn't reply. The air between them held too much history for words. Threx gestured to the holo recorder hovering beside them. The galaxy is listening. Speak, human. Tell them what they want to hear. She hesitated only once before stepping forward. The dome's lights dimmed, a dozen cameras focusing on her face. "My name is Evelyn Drake," she said evenly. "Humanity is not a threat, but we were born on a world that tried to kill us every day. We adapted. We learned to fight, then learned when not to." Her gaze shifted toward the cadets watching below. "The galaxy fears us because they've never seen what survival looks like without malice. They mistake calm for submission, compassion for weakness. They're wrong." She took a slow breath. "We don't fight to conquer. We fight to endure." The hall remained silent. Then, one by one, cadets across species bowed their heads slightly. Even Kethra inclined her antennae in acknowledgement. Threx stepped forward, voice low but audible to all. "Effective immediately, Cadet Evelyn Drake is reinstated with commendation. Her demonstration is now part of required study material for cross-species combat psychology." The announcement rippled through the crowd like a shockwave. Evelyn blinked once, expression unreadable. "Commendation? For nearly breaking the commander's neck?" Threx's crystalline lips formed something close to a smile. "For teaching restraint under provocation. That lesson has been overdue for a century." That evening, she stood alone in the training dome where it had all begun. The cracks in the glass floor had been repaired, yet faint ghost lines still glowed beneath the surface when the lights dimmed. She crouched, fingertips brushing the repaired section. "They fixed the floor," she murmured. "Not the memory." Behind her, Hale approached quietly. "Council's decision came through," he said. "No sanctions. They're calling it the Drake incident. The wording's diplomatic, neutral, careful. You'll be a case study before you're even a graduate." She gave a faint smile. "That's one way to say I scared them." He folded his arms. "You scared them into respect. There's a difference." She looked up toward the academy crest. Maybe they needed reminding what humanity really is. Predators? She shook her head. Survivors who learn to be kind. That's the part they never see. Hale studied her for a moment, then said softly, "Earth's watching. You've become a symbol," Evelyn sighed. "Symbols are dangerous. They stop being people. Then stay human," he said, and walked away. Later that night, when the academy lights dimmed, a message arrived from the Drithian High Command, encrypted, formal, but brief. To Cadet Evelyn Drake. Subject, observation assignment. Content, the Council has approved your transfer to the Diplomatic Corps, effective immediately. Classification, Level Crimson. Mission, maintain balance through understanding. She read it twice before setting the holopad aside. For the first time since arriving at Arkael, she allowed herself a small, tired smile. Outside her window, the stars burned cold and distant, scattered like shards of glass across the void. Somewhere among them, new worlds would hear of the human girl who stopped an empire with a look. Evelyn whispered into the quiet, "Maybe that's enough." Weeks later, in the archives of the Galactic Academy, one restricted file was added to the Behavioral Exception Studies database. Its label read, Case D47A, Human Evelyn Drake. Duration of event, 10.3 seconds. Result, 4 incapacitated, 1 injured, no fatalities. Conclusion, subject demonstrates voluntary restraint during extreme provocation. Annotation, by Commander Threx Varnal. We feared they were monsters. They're worse. They're disciplined ones. Evelyn's name spread through the academies not as a warning, but as a quiet reminder. Humanity doesn't fight for dominance. It fights for choice, and somewhere in the far edge of the galaxy, whispers began again, about the Deathworld species that smiled before storms, and the girl who made even silence seem dangerous.